If you're over 70 years old and you start your morning with just a cup of coffee and a piece of toast, I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to share with you. This seemingly harmless breakfast routine could be the hidden reason why you're losing muscle strength, feeling more tired throughout the day, and struggling with balance issues that you might be blaming on age. What most seniors don't realize is that the first meal of the day sets the stage for muscle preservation or muscle loss, and the choices you're making in those crucial morning hours might be silently accelerating the very decline you're trying to prevent. My name is Dr. Michael Turner, and I've been practicing geriatric medicine for over 20 years. Throughout my career, I've worked with thousands of patients over 70, and I've seen firsthand how simple nutritional adjustments in the morning can mean the difference between maintaining independence and struggling with everyday activities. The muscle loss we experience as we age, known in medical terms as sarcopenia, isn't just an inevitable part of getting older. Much of it is preventable. It starts with understanding what happens to your body from the moment you wake up. Before we dive into these critical mistakes, if you haven't subscribed yet, I strongly recommend hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you never miss another health tip designed specifically for you. If you find this video helpful, please share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I read every single one, and your feedback helps me create more content to help people just like you. Let me tell you about Margaret, a 73-year-old retired teacher from Seattle. Margaret lived alone in a beautiful 2-story home she'd owned for 40 years. She was always proud of her independence, volunteering at the local library twice a week and taking care of her small garden. But over the course of 18 months, she noticed something troubling. She was having more difficulty climbing the stairs in her home. Getting up from her favorite reading chair became a challenge. She'd always been active, but now simple tasks like carrying groceries or playing with her grandchildren left her exhausted. When Margaret came to see me, she was convinced it was just arthritis getting worse. But when we ran some tests and I asked about her daily routine, I discovered something crucial. Every single morning for years, Margaret had been making the same breakfast: black coffee, a small bowl of oatmeal with a little honey, and maybe a banana if she had one. No protein whatsoever. This pattern was literally eating away at her muscle mass, and she had no idea. The first major mistake I see constantly in my practice is skipping protein at breakfast entirely. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I have protein at lunch and dinner, isn't that enough? Unfortunately, when you're over 70, your body processes protein very differently than it did when you were younger. This is something called anabolic resistance. Essentially, your muscles become less responsive to protein intake, which means you need more of it at each meal to trigger muscle protein synthesis, the process that maintains and builds muscle tissue. When you skip protein at breakfast, you're going without this crucial nutrient for 12 to 16 hours from your last meal the night before until lunch. During this time, especially overnight, your body goes into a catabolic state, breaking down muscle tissue for energy and amino acids. Without protein at breakfast, you're extending this muscle breakdown period even longer. The science behind this is fascinating. As we age, our bodies require approximately 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal to stimulate muscle protein synthesis effectively. That's roughly equivalent to 3 to 4 eggs, a cup of Greek yogurt, or a palm-sized portion of fish or chicken. But here's what happens when you start your day with just carbohydrates like toast, cereal, or fruit. Your body gets energy, yes, but it doesn't get the building blocks it needs to repair and maintain muscle tissue. Your muscles essentially go hungry while the rest of your body gets fed. Over months and years, this daily deficit adds up to significant muscle loss. I remember Thomas, a 76-year-old retired mechanic from Dallas. Thomas had always been strong, built like a bull, as his wife used to say. He'd worked with his hands his entire life and took pride in being able to help his neighbors with repairs, even in retirement. But Thomas started noticing he couldn't grip his tools as firmly. His handshake, once powerful, had weakened noticeably. His morning routine for decades had been the same: 2 cups of coffee, 2 slices of white bread with margarine, and he'd head out to his workshop. "I never needed much breakfast, Doc," he told me. "It slowed me down." What Thomas didn't realize was that his body was literally consuming his muscle tissue every morning because it had nothing else to work with. When we added protein to his breakfast, the changes over 3 months were remarkable. His grip strength improved, he had more energy throughout the day, and he could work in his workshop without the fatigue he'd been experiencing. The second critical mistake is consuming too many simple carbohydrates without adequate fiber or protein to balance them. I see this constantly: seniors who start their day with fruit juice, white toast, sugary cereals, or pastries. These foods cause rapid spikes in blood sugar followed by crashes that leave you feeling tired and hungry again within an hour or two. But the problem goes far deeper than just energy levels. When your blood sugar spikes repeatedly, especially first thing in the morning when your body is most insulin sensitive, it triggers inflammation throughout your body. This chronic inflammation is particularly damaging to muscle tissue and can accelerate muscle breakdown. Additionally, these blood sugar spikes and crashes often lead to increased cortisol production, and elevated cortisol is one of the hormones most associated with muscle wasting in older adults. Let me share the story of Dorothy, an 81-year-old former nurse from Boston. Dorothy was meticulous about her health, or so she thought. Every morning she'd have a glass of orange juice, a bowl of cornflakes with skim milk, and a piece of white toast with jam. She believed she was making healthy choices because everything was low fat and she was getting vitamin C from the juice. But Dorothy kept losing weight, specifically muscle mass, despite eating what she considered adequate amounts of food. She'd also developed prediabetes, which her previous doctor attributed simply to age. When I analyzed her typical day, I realized she was starting every morning with approximately 60 grams of fast-digesting carbohydrates and minimal protein. Her blood sugar was spiking to concerning levels every single morning, triggering inflammatory responses and hormonal changes that were actively breaking down her muscle tissue. The fatigue she experienced mid-morning wasn't just age, it was reactive hypoglycemia from the blood sugar crash following her high-sugar breakfast. When we restructured her breakfast to include eggs, vegetables, and some whole grain toast, limiting the juice to a small portion, Dorothy's transformation over 6 months was incredible. She regained muscle mass, her blood sugar normalized, and she told me she felt 20 years younger. If you're still watching and finding this information valuable, please comment below to show me you're following along. Your engagement helps me reach more people who need this information. The third mistake that's incredibly common, but rarely discussed, is inadequate fat intake at breakfast. Now, this might surprise you because for decades we've been told to avoid fat, especially as we age. But here's what the latest research shows us. Healthy fats are absolutely essential for hormone production, including testosterone and growth hormone, both of which play crucial roles in maintaining muscle mass as we age. When you eat a breakfast that's too low in fat, you're not just missing out on nutrients, you're actively suppressing the hormones your body needs to preserve muscle. Additionally, fat is essential for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, which is critical for muscle function and strength in older adults. Many seniors are vitamin D deficient, and one contributing factor is that they're not consuming enough healthy fats to properly absorb the vitamin D from their food or supplements. I'll never forget Robert, a 74-year-old retired accountant from Miami. Robert came to me concerned about his declining physical condition. He'd been following a very strict low-fat diet for years, terrified of heart disease because his father had died of a heart attack at 65. His typical breakfast was fat-free yogurt with fat-free granola and a banana, zero dietary fat. Robert was taking vitamin D supplements, exercising regularly, but still losing muscle mass and feeling weaker. When we tested his vitamin D levels, they were surprisingly low despite supplementation. His testosterone levels were also at the very bottom of the normal range. The problem wasn't his exercise routine or his genes. It was that his ultra-low-fat breakfast was starving his body of the fats needed for hormone production and vitamin absorption. We introduced healthy fats into his morning routine: whole milk yogurt, eggs cooked in olive oil, avocado, nuts. Within 4 months, his hormone levels improved, his vitamin D levels normalized even though he hadn't changed his supplement dose, and his muscle mass and strength began to recover. Robert later told me, "I was so scared of fat that I was literally wasting away. I thought I was being healthy, but I was doing exactly the opposite." But if that surprised you, wait until you hear about the fourth mistake, which is one that almost everyone makes without even realizing it. This is the timing and distribution of nutrients throughout the morning. Most seniors I meet either eat breakfast very late in the morning, sometimes not until 10 or 11 o'clock, or they eat it very early but then go 6 or 7 hours without any additional food intake. Both patterns are problematic for muscle maintenance. Your muscles need a steady supply of amino acids, the building blocks of protein, throughout the day to prevent breakdown. When you wait too long to eat after waking, or when you go too many hours between breakfast and lunch, your body shifts into a catabolic state where it breaks down muscle tissue for energy and amino acids. Research shows us that muscle protein synthesis happens in response to protein intake, but it only stays elevated for about 3 to 4 hours after a meal. This means that if you eat breakfast at 7 in the morning and don't eat again until 1 in the afternoon, you have several hours where your muscles aren't getting the signal to maintain or build tissue. This is particularly problematic for people over 70 because of that anabolic resistance we talked about earlier. Your muscles need more frequent signals to maintain themselves. Sarah, a 79-year-old retired real estate agent from Phoenix, came to see me after a fall that resulted in a minor hip fracture. She was terrified of another fall and wanted to do everything possible to maintain her strength. When I asked about her eating schedule, I learned that Sarah was intermittent fasting because she'd read it was good for longevity. She wouldn't eat anything until noon, then would have a large lunch and dinner. "I feel fine in the mornings, Dr. Turner," she told me. "I have plenty of energy for my coffee." But Sarah's muscle mass told a different story. She'd lost significant muscle over the 2 years she'd been following this pattern. The problem was that by the time she ate at noon, her body had been without food for approximately 16 hours. During this extended fasting period, especially in someone over 70, the body turns to muscle tissue as a fuel source. Yes, she felt energetic from the coffee and the adrenaline response to not eating, but her body was literally consuming itself. When we adjusted her routine to include a protein-rich breakfast within an hour of waking and a small mid-morning snack with protein, the changes were dramatic. Over 8 months, Sarah regained much of the muscle mass she'd lost, her balance improved significantly, and she felt more stable and confident in her movements. The fifth crucial mistake, and this one breaks my heart every time I see it, is inadequate hydration coupled with morning nutrition choices. Most seniors are chronically dehydrated, and they don't even realize it. As we age, our sense of thirst diminishes, and many older adults simply don't drink enough water. But here's what makes this particularly relevant to your morning nutrition. Dehydration significantly impairs muscle protein synthesis and increases muscle breakdown. When you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous, making it harder for nutrients to reach your muscle cells. Additionally, dehydration increases cortisol levels and decreases the production of anabolic hormones like testosterone and growth hormone. Many seniors make the mistake of relying on coffee or tea for their morning fluid intake, not realizing that these beverages, while not as dehydrating as once thought, don't provide the hydration your muscles desperately need after a night of sleep. Let me tell you about Frank, an 82-year-old retired postal worker from Seattle. Frank was in surprisingly good shape for his age, still walking several miles a day, but he complained of persistent muscle cramps, particularly in his legs, and increasing weakness despite maintaining his activity level. When I asked about his fluid intake, Frank admitted he typically had 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and maybe a glass of water with lunch. That was it for his morning hydration. His breakfast consisted of a protein bar and more coffee. Frank was getting some protein, yes, but his body couldn't properly utilize it because he was chronically dehydrated. His muscle cells were literally thirsting for water while trying to process the nutrients he was giving them. When we implemented a new routine where Frank drank 2 full glasses of water before his coffee in the morning and another glass with his breakfast, the changes were remarkable. Within weeks, his muscle cramps significantly decreased. Over several months, his strength improved noticeably, and he told me he felt more solid during his walks. The simple addition of proper hydration allowed his body to actually use the nutrients he was consuming. There's also a 6th factor that I see undermining even the best nutritional intentions, and that's the quality and source of the protein being consumed. Many seniors tell me they eat protein at breakfast, but when I dig deeper, I find they're relying on heavily processed sources or incomplete proteins that don't provide all the essential amino acids their muscles need. A piece of white toast with peanut butter, while containing some protein, doesn't provide the complete amino acid profile needed for optimal muscle protein synthesis. Similarly, many breakfast cereals and bars marketed as high-protein options are often loaded with sugar and contain lower-quality protein sources that aren't as effectively utilized by aging muscles. The amino acid leucine, in particular, is crucial for triggering muscle protein synthesis, and older adults need higher amounts of leucine per meal than younger people to achieve the same muscle-building response. High-quality complete protein sources like eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, fish, or lean meats provide adequate leucine, along with all the other essential amino acids. Plant-based proteins can absolutely work, but they typically need to be combined or consumed in larger quantities to provide the same benefit. I remember Elizabeth, a 77-year-old retired librarian from Portland. Elizabeth was vegetarian and very conscious about her protein intake. Her breakfast typically consisted of almond butter on whole wheat toast and a protein smoothie made with pea protein powder. She calculated that she was getting about 20 grams of protein at breakfast and couldn't understand why she was still losing muscle mass. The issue wasn't the amount of protein, but the quality and leucine content. While her breakfast contained adequate total protein, it wasn't providing enough of the specific amino acids needed to effectively trigger muscle protein synthesis in her 77-year-old body. When we adjusted her breakfast to include higher leucine options like Greek yogurt, hemp seeds, and we increased her overall protein intake slightly to compensate for the lower digestibility of plant proteins, Elizabeth's muscle mass stabilized and then began to increase over the following months. Now, you might be wondering what an ideal morning nutrition routine actually looks like for someone over 70. Let me break this down practically. First, upon waking, drink at least 12 to 16 ounces of water before anything else. This rehydrates your body after sleep and prepares your system to properly absorb and utilize nutrients. Within an hour of waking, consume a breakfast that contains 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein. This could be 3 eggs with vegetables cooked in olive oil, Greek yogurt with nuts and berries, or a piece of salmon with whole grain toast. Include healthy fats from sources like avocado, nuts, olive oil, or fatty fish. These provide essential fatty acids and help with vitamin absorption and hormone production. Add some complex carbohydrates from sources like whole grains, vegetables, or fruit. These provide sustained energy without the blood sugar spikes that promote inflammation and muscle breakdown. If your breakfast happens early, say 6 or 7 in the morning, consider having a small snack around mid-morning that includes 10 to 15 grams of protein. This could be a handful of nuts, some cheese, or a small container of Greek yogurt. This helps maintain the signal for muscle protein synthesis and prevents that long gap where your muscles go without nutrients. Continue drinking water throughout the morning. A good rule of thumb is to consume at least half of your daily water intake before noon. I also want to address a concern I hear frequently in my practice. Dr. Turner, I'm just not hungry in the morning. How can I eat all this food when I wake up? This is incredibly common, and there are usually 2 reasons for it. First, if you've been skipping breakfast or eating very little in the morning for years, your body has adapted by suppressing morning hunger signals. This can be retrained, but it takes patience. Start small. If you currently eat nothing, start with just a glass of milk or a small yogurt. Gradually increase the amount over several weeks. Your appetite will adapt. The second reason is often that people eat too much too late in the evening, which suppresses morning appetite. If you're eating a large meal at 8 or 9 at night, you're likely still digesting when you wake up. Try to have your last substantial meal earlier in the evening and keep late night snacks light if you need them. This will help restore natural morning hunger. Another question I frequently get is about supplements. Should I be taking a protein supplement at breakfast, doctor? Supplements can be helpful, but they shouldn't be your primary source of nutrition. Whole foods provide not just protein, but also a complex matrix of other nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and compounds that work synergistically to support muscle health. That said, if you're truly struggling to eat enough protein through whole foods, a high-quality protein powder added to a smoothie or mixed into yogurt can be a useful tool. Look for options that provide at least 25 grams of protein per serving and contain minimal added sugars. Whey protein is excellent if you tolerate dairy, as it's particularly high in leucine. Plant-based options like pea, hemp, or a blend can work well for those who prefer or require them, but you may need slightly more to achieve the same effect. Let me share one more story that really illustrates how powerful these changes can be. John, an 80-year-old retired engineer from Chicago, came to see me 2 years ago. He'd been increasingly weak, struggling to get out of chairs, having difficulty with stairs, and his wife was worried he might need to move to assisted living. John had always been sharp and independent, and the thought of losing his autonomy was devastating to him. When we reviewed his routine, I found he was making virtually every mistake we've discussed. His breakfast was instant oatmeal with artificial sweetener, black coffee, and maybe a piece of fruit. No protein, minimal fat, simple carbohydrates, poor hydration, and he often didn't eat until 9 or 10 in the morning despite waking at 6. We completely restructured his morning nutrition. John started drinking 2 glasses of water immediately upon waking. Within an hour, he'd have a breakfast of 3 scrambled eggs with vegetables cooked in olive oil, a slice of whole grain toast with avocado, and a small bowl of berries. He'd have another glass of water with breakfast and continue sipping water throughout the morning. Around 10:30, he'd have a small snack of Greek yogurt or a handful of almonds. The transformation over 6 months was nothing short of remarkable. John regained significant muscle mass and strength. He was able to climb stairs with confidence again. Getting out of chairs became effortless. His energy levels throughout the day improved dramatically. But perhaps most importantly, his independence was preserved. John is still living at home with his wife, still driving, still managing his own affairs, and he credits these nutritional changes with giving him his life back. I had no idea that something as simple as what I ate in the morning could make such a difference, he told me at his last visit. I thought I was just getting old and there was nothing I could do about it. The truth is, while we can't stop aging, we have far more control over how we age than most people realize. Muscle loss isn't inevitable. Weakness isn't inevitable. Loss of independence isn't inevitable. So much of what we attribute to aging is actually the result of accumulated nutritional deficiencies and poor dietary patterns that can be corrected. I want to emphasize something crucial here. If you recognize yourself in any of these patterns, please don't feel discouraged or guilty. Most of my patients have been making these mistakes for years, often because they thought they were making healthy choices. You can't change the past, but you can absolutely change your future, starting with tomorrow morning. The human body has a remarkable capacity to respond to improved nutrition, even in our 70s, 80s, and beyond. I've seen patients in their 90s make significant improvements in muscle mass and strength when they optimize their nutrition. So here's what I want you to do. Starting tomorrow morning, implement just one of these changes. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. That's overwhelming and often leads to giving up. Pick the change that resonates most with you or addresses your biggest gap. Maybe it's adding protein to your breakfast. Maybe it's drinking water before your coffee. Maybe it's adjusting the timing of your morning meal. Start there. Once that becomes routine, add another change. Build on your success gradually. Small, sustainable changes compound over time into remarkable results. I also strongly encourage you to discuss these changes with your own healthcare provider, especially if you have any chronic health conditions or take medications. While the principles I've shared are generally applicable to most seniors, individual circumstances can vary. Your doctor can help tailor these recommendations to your specific situation and monitor your progress. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. Every protein-rich breakfast is a win. Every morning you hydrate properly is a win. Every day you nourish your muscles is a day you're investing in your future independence and quality of life. Your muscles are counting on you to feed them, and when you do, they'll reward you with strength, stability, and the ability to continue doing the things you love. If you found this information helpful, please share this video with friends and family members who might benefit from it. Leave a comment below letting me know which of these mistakes you're going to address first. I read every comment and love hearing about your progress. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss future videos where I'll continue sharing practical, evidence-based strategies to help you maintain your health, independence, and vitality as you age. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your health today. Your future self will thank you for it.